If you have Office 365, you have the option to customize the SharePoint new item form using PowerApps. So what I'm talking about is in a modern list view, I can click new and I see this default SharePoint form looking pretty basic. Maybe I want to add some conditional formatting or something to make it more interesting. So this is just kind of an entry-level exploratory post to give you an idea of some of the things you can do pretty quickly using PowerApps. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click New, and I'm going to click Customize up here. And what this is going to do is it's going to take that new item form, and it's going to automatically create a form in PowerApps to get me started. Okay, so it created a form here. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in just a little bit so I can see that a little bit more clearly. And right away we can see there are some fields here that maybe I don't want to see on the edit screen for the form, but you could leave this there if you want, especially like created by sometimes is nice to see. I'm going to clean that up a bit by clicking on the name of the form here, so then I can choose which fields I want to show up here. And then at the very top here where it says data, I can click that and then pick and choose which fields I want to be on there. I'm going to say basically nothing that I'm not going to build a condition on, just so we can keep it as simple as possible. Okay, and then you can also rearrange the fields here. Let's say I wanted to put fund above all of the different money fields. So we've got fund, hotel, plane, registration. So it makes more sense to me, and you can just drag and drop to do that. Okay, so I'm done with that bit. Now, one thing that's really nice to do is have like a dynamic total whenever you're dealing with money. And this specific form is basically a travel request where people are saying how much they expect to spend on a trip. So the way we can do that is just by going to Insert, Label. Okay, and then I'm going to drag that down to the bottom where I want that to show up. And we can do some formatting here. So I'm just going to go ahead and say, let's see, go to the Home tab. Let's do size 32. So now we're ready to do our first, basically it's going to be a formula. So I'm going to go to this property box here, and we're going to change that to text. And this is where we can say what we want it to say. And there's a formula, it's called Concatenate. It puts two strings together. So basically what I want to combine is, let's go ahead and start here. I want to say the word total with a $sign. And then the second piece I want to combine with that would be the sum of the previous three currency things. So I'm going to say sum. And then the way we get the name of these fields to know what they're called is we can just click on one and make sure you click on the specific dollar amount where you would enter that. And then we can just look up here and it's data card value 4. We can look over here on the left. If we expand a little bit, data card value 4, or at the bottom if we could see that, data card value 4. So let's go back to our new text box here. I'm going to say sum data card value 4. And then we want these other two. And this one is data card value 5. This one is data card value 6. So back to the text here. We'll go ahead and type those in. Data card value 5, data card value 6. Okay, so we've got the formula here, but the problem with this is going to be that we have a text value that we're trying to concatenate with a number value. So it's pretty simple to switch that over. Just right before sum, we're going to type text so we can convert that and just put that in parentheses. So now you can see we've got this total field working pretty nicely here. And we can move that, we can reposition it, we can change the color of it if we want, but we'll get back to that later. So we've got our first pretty cool formula there. The next thing we're going to do is do something with the dates, where basically if someone puts an end date that is before the start date, we want to flag that and let them know. So let's go ahead and click on the end date, and then we can use this relatively new feature in PowerApps called rules, and then we'll do new rule. Okay, and then add a condition, and I'm going to do custom condition. And it automatically fills in whatever you clicked on, but that's not what I want to have selected at this point. So I'm going to backspace that. And what I really want to do is that value. So always make sure you're clicking on the value if that's what you're working with. So this one is data card value 3. So I'm going to say basically if. I don't have to put the if, but I'm going to think that as I type this. So data card value 3 is less than data card value 2, which is the start date here. So if that evaluates to true, then I get to define some actions here. And this is a pretty neat feature where I can just click define actions, and then it's going to kind of track anything I do. So now I'm going to click the whole card instead of just the value. And I'm going to say, let's make that red if that happens. Okay, and then the title, instead of black text, let's make it white text. And let's see if that's bolded. There we go. Okay, so now if the end date comes before the start date, it's going to do this. So we'll do done there. Okay, so let's pretend we didn't put anything in end date. And we're actually already seeing the result here. So as soon as I start typing in start date, let's say it's the first of the year, it's going to flag that as red. And we haven't even had a chance to put anything in the end date yet. So the way we can keep that from happening, and so that it waits until we have a date in both fields, we can go back into that rule we just created. So rule 1. So again, we're going to say data card value 3. And then I'm just going to keep this simple, say is greater than the first of the year in 1899. And then to do multiple conditions, just do 2 ampersands like that. So now it's going to say if the end date is basically anything and it comes before the start date, then it's going to flag it. So now it's not going to flag it immediately. And we can test that. So we've got the first of the year here, and it's already not showing up. So that's great. And then let's just make sure it works. If it's the same day, the first of the year, no issue. If it's before, it flags it. So that's working pretty nicely. Now, another thing we can do along that same line is we can do conditions based on selection fields. So we've got this choice field here. And let's say the Miller Award can't pay for more than $50 for registration. So if that happens, if they choose Miller Award and they put registration down here as like 100, we want to flag that. So let's do another new rule, add a condition. Okay, and for this one, we're going to see when we click on this, it's data card value 6. So we're going to type that in, data card value 6 is greater than 50. And so we're doing 2 conditions here. We only care if it's over 50 if the fund, so let's click on that. We see it's data card value 7, data card value 7. And since this is a choice field, we have to do a period, and then basically we're saying selected, so whatever choice was selected, one more period, and then you can see it's suggesting values like sub value, value 1. We can figure that out by clicking advanced over here, scrolling down, and then value 1 is the value. Value 2 is a sub value, but we just care about whatever they picked for that first value there. So value 1 equals, and then in quotations, the value, so Miller Award. Now you'll see this red squiggle underline is saying invalid argument type, expecting a number value. You could also check the yield sign up here. It'll tell you the same thing that's wrong with your conditions. So since it's seeing data card value 6 or registration as text, we can convert that to a number by putting value before it. And then after data card value 6, we need to type text. So then it's going to convert the text value of data card value 6 to a number. Now that yield sign's gone. So now let's go ahead and define the action. So if both of those are true, define actions. And then let's come down here to this card, and we're going to do the same thing we did before. We're going to make it red. And we're going to make the title bold and white. Down here, let's add some text. Let's say done here for now. And then we're going to insert a label. And let's drag that down. Let's put it right under registration. And we're going to say Miller Fund cannot help with registration costs over $50. Okay, and let's make that red. And one line. And I'm actually going to put it under the total line instead. So we've got that. And then let's go ahead and do the same thing for the end date one. We're going to insert a label. Let's drag that just maybe right next to the end date here. And we're going to say end date must be on or after start date. Okay, and if that appears, remember there's a red background there, so this time we're going to make this one white. Okay, and then the thing we have to do with these is make them invisible until we're ready for them to be visible. So we can drop down the property here when we have that selected, go to visible, and say false. So now it's invisible. And let's go over here to our rules. I just clicked or unchecked show rules for this control only so I can see all my rules. And remember, that was our first one. Now I'm going to define one more action. And I've already got that selected, so now I'm just going to say true. So now it's going to show up like that. So I'm done with that one. We're going to do the same thing for what the label we just put at the bottom is. So Miller Fund cannot help with registration costs. We're going to go to property, visible, change that to false. And then let's go to rule 2, define actions. And now visible, true. And done. Okay. So that's kind of how we do hiding things, showing things conditionally. You could also do that with a field. Like let's say we wanted to hide the entire registration thing if they chose Miller Award. Maybe the Miller Award can't pay for registration at all. And we do that the same way by expanding the rule. And then we could just say define actions. And then for registration, we would just go to visible and we'd say false. So we're not going to do that though, because in this case, the Miller Award can pay for $50. So we're done there. Done there. So another thing we can do is insert a label whenever we're dealing with 2 dates, and we can show the duration just to confirm. And this is handy just to get everybody on the same page when filling out forms, especially like reimbursement forms, to say how long a trip is. So we can say trip duration. And then let's go ahead and do another calculation to fill in the rest of this. So remember, like we did before, we're going to concatenate, join 2 strings of text together, trip duration, and then comma to separate, we're going to say date diff. And what that allows us to do is find the number of days between 2 dates. So parentheses, the start date, I believe that's data card value 2. I can click to make sure it is. So going back to here, data card value 2. And remember, whenever we're dealing with choice fields or date fields, it's a selection. So period, selected date. And then comma, we're going to do the same for the end date, data card value 3, dot selected date. Okay. And then we're actually going to join one more string. So we've got trip duration and then a number. And then we're going to say quote space days. Okay, now this has some problems that we're going to fix right away. The first is going to be if the event starts and ends on the same day, it's going to say 0 days. So we always want it to count a single day event like that as one day. So we're going to do a sum right before date diff. And we're going to do right after the last parenthesis there, comma, 1, close parentheses. So now we're at least going to have 1. And then the other thing we're going to do is we have to convert this date difference to text, just like we did before. Because right now it's reading it as a number and it's expecting to join text. And if we hover over it, it'll tell us that as well. So now we need to convert that sum that we just did to a text value. So text right before sum, and close it right after that last parenthesis. Okay, and now we can see trip duration 1 days. So let's do one more thing here. If we scroll down, we did a condition on a choice field once for Miller Award. Let's do one more. Let's say this total amount can't be above $1,000 if they're using professional development money. So let's say professional development selected. We're gonna do one more rule here. Add a condition, custom condition. This time it is what I wanted, data card value 7, because I selected that first. And then I'm gonna add selected after the period and value 1 again. So if that equals professional development, and so the double ampersand. Now this time we're gonna say that sum total, that amount. So we're just gonna rebuild that. So, and the sum of data card value 4, data card value 5, data card value 6. Okay. So if that's greater than 1,000, then let's go ahead and define our actions. And for this one, we're going to say, let's make the total red. And let's add one more label here. Getting lots of practice here. So done there. So we get our menu back, insert, label. We'll drag that down. Let's put this one down here. Let's put it in the same place we put Miller Award. They won't overlap each other since you can only choose one fund. So this one we're going to say professional development cannot exceed $1,000 per event. And see if we can get that to a single line. We'll make that red as well. Okay, and then remember our property for that should be visible false until that condition is met. So now let's go back to rule 3, define one more action. And we've already got that selected, so we're just going to make that true. Perfect. So if they chose professional development and the total is over 1,000, then it's going to give us the red total with that note. So we're done there. And let's go ahead and test a few of these now. We're going to go back to SharePoint, save and publish. Okay, and then if we click new, the first time it usually takes just a little bit longer to load the form. After that, it should load almost immediately for you. Okay, so we can put our event in here. Let's say SharePoint Fest Seattle. Start date 1/1/2018. Let's test that end date by saying 12/31/2017. End date must be on or after start date. Let's say 1/5/2018. And we're seeing trip duration is correct, 5 days. Let's do special request first. We'll say 400, 400, and let's do 100. So that's fine. We didn't do anything for special request. But remember, registration can only be 50 for Miller Award. So let's see what happens when we select that. Registration turns red. Miller Fund cannot help with registration costs over 50. Okay, let's try professional development. We're fine, remember, because we're not over 1,000. But let's say we are. Then we get the red total and professional development cannot exceed 1,000 per event. So all works fine. There's one more thing I wanted to do, and that is not show this trip duration until both dates have been entered. So let's go back to customize. Okay, so let's add one more rule. It's going to be based on these dates. So I'm going to go ahead and select the first one. We'll do new rule, add a condition, custom condition. Okay, so data card value 2, and remember this is kind of like a selection field, so start typing selected, you can get selected date. We're going to say it is greater than, the same thing we did before, just make sure it's a date greater than the 1st of 1899. And so we make sure there's something in the end date. We're going to do the same thing for that. Data card value 3 dot selected date is greater than the 1st of 1899. So if both date fields have a date in them, then we're going to show that trip duration. So let's go ahead and do done, because remember, first we need that to be invisible. So we'll change the labels property, visible to false. And then we'll go back to that new rule, so rule 5, define actions, and we'll make that true. All right, so we're done with that. Now let's go back to rules. You may have noticed there's a yield sign here. It's because I forgot a D, data card value 3, selected date. Now that should all be fine. And there's one more yield sign on rule 4. Let's check that out. Oh, and that's just a blank one. Okay, and then back to SharePoint, save and publish. Okay, and let's check it out. We'll click new. Okay, and we'll do SharePoint Fest. We'll do Denver this time. 1/1/2018. Let's do 1/5/2018. So now it popped in the trip duration after we'd entered both dates, which is nice. We'll say professional development, 500, 500, 500. Whoops, can't be over 1,000. Let's say registration is free. Save. And there we go. That's all there is to it. Good luck.